All right, guys, welcome back. Give it up for the woman of our dreams, Heather Langenkamp.
Do you have any fond memories or favorite moments from Wes Craven's New Nightmare?
Not one. Just kidding. Of course, that movie was. Whoa, this is like a hot mic. Because so many years had passed, and from the first movie, almost 10 years, so I felt way more comfortable. Like I knew more that what I was doing, so every day was a lot more relaxed. But the character that I played was just going through so much trauma that there was a lot of anxiety that I just had, wanting to play Nancy as this mother. I think my fondest memories of those days was just, kind of being with John Saxon. We had a lot of nice scenes together for the first time, and he wasn't like a drunkard, and he wasn't like being a horrible dad. Like he was just being a great guy, and being able to act with John Saxon as, two actors who are friends. I think that was one of the high points. And then another high point for me was I just felt like a lot of the dream sequences were so imaginative, especially the one in the cemetery when I have to fall into the coffin, and that whole sequence to me was just really beautifully done, and I really liked it a lot. So just pushing the envelope of these dreams, I was always amazed that Wes could constantly, push the envelope like he did. It was great.
First Nightmare on Elm Street, I know they shot like 3 different endings, but which ending did you personally prefer?
Well, I actually like the ending where Nancy is obviously defeated Freddy and walks away and everything is beautiful again. That was the one that there's no chance that Freddy still lives in our universe. That was the ending that I was hoping that they might go with. But then, the producers are smart people. They know they want to make sequels. And back then that was a new concept. But I think Bob Shea was really a great businessman. And so he knew making this element of questioning what's happening at the end was going to serve him in the future. So of the endings that we did, I think the one they picked is my favorite, where the car comes. There was one where the car comes and picks me up and I get in and it's Freddy driving, and that one actually too was really terrifying and might have been a more scary ending actually. Yeah, part of my voice, I've been talking for 2 days, so I can feel it's really rough.
Hey, I just have a question.
Yeah.
In Wes Craven's New Nightmare, your son Dylan, you say you don't want him watching films. Can you speak on what age you might show your children horror movies?
Oh, I'm such I'm not the norm in America, but, well, I had two attitudes about, first of all, when you're a kid and your mom is an actress, your life can be really miserable because everyone is paying so much attention to your parent, and they're giving your parent all this attention, and the kids start to feel not lesser, but they just feel like, what can they do possibly to get any attention in this world? So I really never even told my kids I was an actor when they were little. I just was a mom and took them to soccer and did all the things that were as normal as possible. And then when they got to be 7 or 8 years old, and they asked, they kind of heard that I was an actor. I just told them that someday they'd be able to see the movies, but never with me in the room. And so I think they probably saw them when they were 13 or 14 at slumber parties. I want everybody to see this movie. I want everyone to be or have an uncle take them out and watch the movie, or go sneak into a movie theater on their own when they're underage. I'd rather somebody do that than I didn't want to sit down and say, this is me when I was young. Because I don't want to rob them of all the fun of Nightmare on Elm Street. So when my kids were about 14 or 15, my daughter came home one day from a slumber party and she says, Mom, they showed Nightmare on Elm Street last night at the slumber party, and I'm like, yeah, and so what did you think? And she's like, it was really scary, Mom, but I was so embarrassed because I knew it was you. And, kids like that are so embarrassed at that age. But I just wanted my kids to have normal lives, and so I didn't ever emphasize that I was an actor or that they should, pay attention to what my career had been.
Hi, Heather. How did Wes work? How did he work on the set with directing you, Robert, and on the movies you guys did?
That's a great question. So he wrote the script, and he wrote the script in 1, 3, and 7. So he puts a lot on paper that actors can use to figure out what they want to do. And so we would come to work each day. I would have my own ideas of, how I wanted to play the scene, or if I wanted to be, crying or not crying, or, and so I would bring what I had practiced at home and had worked on. And Wes was always really direct. He would always say, I like that, but I want you to be more distraught, or I want you to be less, I want you to be very cautious when you do this line or walking to the stairway. He would always give me directions that were really clear, and I would always want to please him, so I tried to always do whatever he asked. I know that with Robert, he was a more experienced actor than I was, so I think he deferred to Robert a lot, especially when we were doing our fight scenes. Robert had so much experience in acting school and also just on sets that Robert often choreographed our whole fight scene, and he would say that, the camera's gonna love it if Heather's doing this and my glove is here, or let's do this where I pin you up against the wall. A lot of it was Robert's suggestions, and I think Wes was really happy to take them. Whenever Wes was very, when he wanted something, he didn't back down very often, and I only fought him once, and I lost.
Sounds like Wes
In the battle.
was pretty open with
Very,
you guys on
it was
set.
very friendly. He wasn't some directors want you to know that they're in power. They
Yeah,
wield.
it sounds like he wasn't a control freak.
He was not a control freak. In fact, I asked him one time. I said, "So when you pick those pajamas, did you pick them because they had the roses, and then there's the roses on the house, and then there's this theme of roses?" And he's like, "No, they just brought me pajamas." And I said, "Okay." So he wasn't some directors really pay attention to every detail. He really trusted people to just bring their best work, and on a low budget, you just have to be happy that they even have pajamas there, And so he was always very kind, and he never insulted people. He didn't make people belittle people. I've worked with directors who their communication skills are a little bit brusque, but no, Wes was always a gentleman, and he had been raised in a very religious household. He had taken the Bible to school with him every day, so I felt like he was coming from a tradition where you have a lot of compassion, and you are very, humble. You're a humble person, and I think that came across. And he was very shy, actually. He was a really shy person too.
With all the craze of the legacy sequels and all these properties like Halloween, Scream having the legacy, Final Girls come back and all that stuff, if you were approached to come back to A Nightmare on Elm Street for that type of sequel, how would you approach it? Would you want to set it maybe directly after the first film, or would you want to be more like in Dream Warriors, you're there but you also have main characters outside of yourself there as well?
I just see so many possibilities in all those that you've mentioned. I can see Nancy, being in a more spiritual realm after Nightmare 3, then taking care of the Dream Warriors in their adult lives, or there's a lot of scenarios that would work with a Dream Warrior scenario. I think I also love Wes Craven's New Nightmare so much. I think that movie really just ended with me and Dylan kind of on our own after this incredible ordeal. And you don't really know if Freddy's really gone, because we thought we got him in the first one too. So, maybe Freddy comes back even again. I think that with, as we get older as people, I think our stories are really interesting. So, I really loved watching Jamie Lee Curtis come back and play in Halloween Ends. I felt like a lot of closure, like a lot of good feelings about seeing her reprise her role. So, that would be a wonderful event if it happens. But, I hear a lot of talk about it, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem like anyone is really able to, make it happen. So.
We'll take charge, and you decide, all right, I'm going back after it. And it's like a combination of A-Team and Sigourney Weaver from Aliens.
Yes.
And I think you're even more amazing.
Those are my two favorite shows, A-Team and Aliens.
It is so freaking awesome. But anyway, I just love that.
Well, I mean, the scene where I'm following the pills down the hallway, is this what the scene like when in New Nightmare we're talking about, right? Or are we talking about,
The first one.
oh, we're talking about the booby
I
traps.
love- yeah,
Okay, we're talking about,
Thompson in particular were
yeah.
amazing. I just was curious, like, did you have any special inspiration? for this?
Well, you know, Wes showed me that book, Booby Traps and Anti-Personnel Devices, and I said, did props make this up for you? Like, is this a real thing? Is booby traps and anti-personnel devices? And he's like, oh no, this is real, Heather. And I'm like, it is? And so as soon as I found out that it's really an issue that they give to the Army and soldiers that are going into the battlefield, I immediately wanted to memorize the whole book and like know how to do all of the booby traps. But yeah, once Wes turned me on to this idea that this is gonna be how she conquers Freddy, I just wanted to do them all. I mean, I think the movie could have been an extra hour. There were so many booby traps in that book, but we picked the best ones, yeah.
Has anyone asked you to sign that book?
Yeah, I have had a couple people. I don't know whether they made it themselves or whether they went out and found one out there, you know, on eBay, but they do exist.
So Heather, Mike Flanagan's really making a name for himself in the horror genre.
Yeah.
How was it working with him on Midnight Club?
It was so much fun, and I really feel like Mike plucked me out of obscurity because it was it was right during the pandemic, maybe like 6 months. We'd all been at home, you know, between March and, December. It was just really grim. And I just felt like, oh, nothing's good is gonna happen. All of us felt that way. We just felt so hopeless, and I got this call that, I had an audition, which I hadn't had an audition in a long time. I needed to get on tape like that day. They were gonna send me the sides, and it was for a part in Show Up in Vancouver. So I didn't even really know that it was for Mike Flanagan. And then I got the material, and I just really felt like the divine was at work in my life. I never really feel that often. But the part was a woman, you know, who'd lost her son to cancer. I had just lost my son to cancer. She was a physician, and she just had this, you know, love of teenagers. She had opened a hospice, and my sister is actually a hospice nurse practitioner, and so I'm really interested in that as well. And so all these things that I was already interested in and already felt I knew so much about, and you know, cancer is so difficult to handle in any family. So I said, how does this man know that this is me, like right now? And so I did the audition. I spent I think I spent 8 hours like trying to get a perfect take. And if you know Mike Flanagan, it's like these long monologues that are 3 pages long. And so I didn't have much time to memorize it, so I kept making mistakes. And then I'd be like, okay, start from the beginning, and then do this long take, and then at the very end I'd miss the last word. I'm like, okay, we gotta start again. And then I would just did it all day from maybe 8 a.m. Finally, my agent called and said, where is your audition? Like, they are sitting there waiting for it. I'm like, okay, it'll be right there. And so the next take I did, I'm like, we're gonna have to take it. And it was good. I didn't make too many mistakes, and I was happy with it. I sent it in, and I got word back, like, they really like it, and they're gonna offer you the part. But so I just thought it was one episode, and I thought, wow, this is amazing, one part. And then they're like, yeah, it's Mike Flanagan. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I know Mike Flanagan that well. And so I made it a point to watch like everything he had done that night. And of course I'd seen Midnight Mass, or I'd seen Haunting of Hill House. And so I knew who he was. And so then I watched Oculus, you know, Haunting of Bly Manor. Then I watched Midnight Mass, like all at the same time. And then I'm like, wow, he's a really good director. He's really knows how to make horror movies. And so the next day I found out I got the part. And then I turned out that it was not just a 1 episode thing, it was the whole season, 10 episodes up in Canada. So because it was still COVID, I packed my little dog in my car, and my husband decided to stay behind because it was too hard to get people across the border. Only one at a time was allowed to go. So I went by myself to Vancouver, and we started making the movie. I got to meet Mike, and I'd only met him like on a Zoom call. So when I got there, I said, well, I really appreciate, you know, everything you've done for me. This is amazing. And I'd like to know, like, how did you know that my son had died of cancer? Like, how did you know that? And he's like, I didn't know that. He's like, I just thought you would be perfect for this part. And I said, well, it's so perfect for me. This part, I feel like, was made for me. So he got goosebumps and I got goosebumps, and it was really amazing. And, you know, I consider him a friend, and I hope I get to work with him again. I did do one other part for him that's coming out really soon in Life of Chuck. So my friend said he saw it and he's like, you're hilarious. And I'm like, I wasn't supposed to be funny in it. So I don't know, I haven't seen it yet. We'll see what happens.
They should put you in The Exorcist.
That would be great. I don't know if I want to like cross-pollinate the franchises. I don't know, I just feel like I've been Nancy for so long. I feel so loyal to Nightmare on Elm Street, and I have had other opportunities to be in horror movies, and I love it always, but it's never going to be the same as if it was, you know, a Nightmare on Elm Street project.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And you were Nightmare on Elm Street, and you liked it or disliked?
You know, I decided not to see it on purpose,
Okay.
yeah, because I just didn't want to see another man play Freddy Krueger. That was my whole, like, I just love Robert Englund and his portrayal of Freddy. I think everything he did was so perfect. And I understand that they wanted to, you know, they want to bring new people in, but for me, I just didn't want to have that in my head. So, you know, gotta be careful what you put in your head. That's what I decided.
She's so great, right?
How much time did you have to take just to do all 3
Oh, what a great question. So, the first movie we shot in 5 weeks, which is not a very long time, 24 days. And I was 18 years old. And so that was from like June 5th to July 17th, like around there, something like that. Because I celebrated my birthday on set, and it's July 17th. So I know that it was like June, July of that year. And then when we did Nightmare 3, it was a little bit longer because it was much more complicated with all those kids in the scenes. And so I believe it was more like a 7-week. And I was about 24 years old when we did that one. And then 7 weeks. And then Wes Craven's New Nightmare was exactly 10 years later from Nightmare 1. And we probably took about 8 weeks to make that one. So all told, maybe less than 20 weeks to do all 3 of those movies. It's not very long. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question? Okay.
Nightmare, we got to see Heather and Robert interacting together.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel that the movie portrayed your actual relationship with her in real life?
Well, in that movie, I love it because I'm like calling Robert and like, Robert, this is happening. I mean, I don't just pick up the phone and call Robert and just tell him like, you know, things that I have to say. I usually wait like for his birthday or if I have like a really pressing question, I'll sometimes call him up, but we don't have that like really casual relationship that, you know, I say, oh, Robert, did you see what happened today? Oh my gosh, you know, I wouldn't like call him up just to waste his time with something. But there are many times that I have called Robert, you know, I want to tell him something important, or I, you know, heard something I want to share with him. So we kind of have he can call me anytime, I can call him anytime. And I'd say like 2 or 3 times a year, we have a nice talk on the phone. And then here at these shows, I get to see him, you know, for 3 days in a row, so it's awesome. But you guys, I mean, you know how hard it is to see Robert. It's also hard for me to see Robert, so. I actually went to dinner when we were in the last show, we were in Montreal, and I think I went to dinner 2 nights in a row with Robert, and it was pretty incredible. I mean, he just has the best stories. Even the ones you've heard, like, he even has more. Like, there's always more. And he's worked with so many famous people. He's been on so many interesting sets. He's been all around the world. He's been to every restaurant that is important. He's seen every play that you want to see. So he's kind of a man of the world. So I just sit back and listen to all of his great stories like you do.
Loving the New Nightmare.
It's great to see you again.
You too.
When you were doing A Nightmare on Elm Street, the very first film, when was the very first time you saw Robert Englund like in the full Freddy makeup, and what was your initial feeling? Like, were you scared? You know,
Great question. is I remember when I got the role, we worked a lot on me, like my makeup. I had this big, huge white wig they were gonna put me in when I got scared at the sleep center. I was gonna wear this giant white wig, and there's a very famous wig maker named Peter, and he's from Hungary, I think. Anyway, he was making me this wig. It took forever, it took a couple of weeks. And I remember trying it on. So they were focused on me and my look a lot. And I never saw Robert. I didn't even really think about Robert Englund. I didn't even think about Freddy Krueger. I didn't even think about like what he was gonna look like. And I think I worked a couple of days without Robert, doing scenes maybe with Glenn, or I think we did the high school scene the first day. We did some of the things with the four of us.
Yep.
And then we did the high school scene where I walk down into the basement, and I go down following Tina's blood trail, and then he opens the curtain, or I open the curtain, and there he's standing in the darkness, and it was really scary. And I really saw like, oh, this is the Freddy Krueger that they've been talking about. It's really scary. But I hadn't seen him get his makeup on or anything, so to me it was like a very surprising vision. It was like a vision. So from then on, I kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. I never really even watched a scary movie. I mean, I'd seen some movies that were more like thrillers, but I never saw The Exorcist or anything like that. So I just didn't know what people would think is scary. I was just keeping my fingers crossed that Wes knew what he was doing.
Thank you so much, Heather. I mean that. Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much.
Thank you. Hey there.
Hi, so I wanted to know, how was the audition process for the first movie?
That's a great question. So I was, I had basically asked my dad, like, Dad, can I have a little bit of money? I want to try to become an actor in Los Angeles, and he just practically fainted. But he was so generous, and he said, okay, you can have, he gave me $5,000, and he said, you can make it last as long as you can. And so I was going to college, and I asked them to take a leave of absence, and so I did. I moved down to LA, and it's kind of getting to the end of my $5,000 because I had to, rent an apartment for a few months, and I had to buy a car, and so this audition came along, and I was just really grateful for it. And I was a little bit dismayed that it was a horror movie, but I didn't know much about horror movies, like I said, so I didn't really know about it. And I went to the audition, and it was in a second-story building in Hollywood, and really dilapidated part of town. I put a club, one of those clubs that goes on your car when, I made sure it was locked before I got out of the car. And because I had this really old car that I was afraid was going to get stolen in Hollywood. And I go up there, and there's not a single stick of furniture in the whole room. It's like a little office space with just one desk where the casting director is sitting, and all of us are sitting on the floor. And it's so grimy and dusty, and I just thought, where am I? What am I got myself into? So I do the audition, and I leave. And they gave me a call back, which is great. And so you go back a couple days later, and the next time I went, there were more people, and there was a couple of chairs this time. But the casting director was taking people in 2 by 2, and so she said, Heather and Amanda, you come in. Heather, you read for Nancy. Amanda, you read for Tina. And because we had both sides, like parts that we were being asked to read. So Amanda read for Tina, and I read for Nancy. We sat on a little couch, and Wes Craven was in the room, and he just looked like just the most normal, regular guy. And he was probably wearing a tie, because he always wore a tie. And the casting director, Annette Benson, she's like, okay, go ahead, girls. And she read the other parts, and it was a scene where we're at Tina's house, and we're pretending that, Johnny's there with his, his boogie box, boom box, like trying to convince his mom that he's at his cousin's house. That scene we read, and so we just did the scene, and I went, like I'm pretending to be the fingernails. And after we finished, Wes was like, congratulations, you have the part. And it was really amazing. It's never happened before or since that I think anybody's gotten a part like that. But Amanda and I both were just so thrilled, and we left like, oh my God, we're gonna be best friends forever. And we are. So it was really one of those fateful, days. You really feel like fate intervened that day.
All right, guys, thank you for coming. Give it up for Heather Langenkamp.